Chapter 7, Mind Bomb. Uh-oh, are we getting another mind bomb? Who's getting affected this time, if so? The next morning, Celeste showed up wanting to look at Jack again. With the things Kesa brought her, she wanted to work on his injuries some more. The broken wrist was going to be the problem injury. Bone took a lot more effort to regenerate than wounds. Celeste still wasn't in great shape herself, but she was prone to not taking her own advice about resting. And there wasn't anyone else with her skill and knowledge. Her treatment, combined with Jack's natural regeneration abilities, had his body in a much better state by the end of the session. Just some residual stiffness in his injured shoulder. And the wrist, of course. The biggest remaining issue was fatigue. His own biokinesis had been working non-stop, adding its own stress to his system. And there was no solution to that other than a lot of rest. I took breakfast to him in the morning, and a short while later he complained about needing air. And that's how we ended up here. So we ended up on the roof. He claimed he was feeling fine, but I had paid attention to how he leaned on me as we climbed the stairs. He was not as well off as he was pretending to be.
Feels good to get out of bed.
You've only been bedridden for a day and a half.
I'm not made for lying around, Butterfly.
What are you made for? Running around nearly getting yourself killed? He laughed quietly.
I like to think I'm made for keeping other people from getting themselves killed.
You're not invincible, Jack.
You don't have to tell me that.
Don't I?
Haven't we had this conversation?
I guess we have.
Then let's talk about something else. Doing any more sneaking around in the catacombs these days?
No. Unlike you, I tend to listen when people give me advice.
Oh, come on. Where's that adventurous spirit of yours?
You're the one who told me it was dangerous. Besides, I've been busy with other things.
Well, I guess you have been working hard to improve your TK.
And my other abilities. Telekinesis isn't the only one.
Yeah, you mentioned working on mimicking, and working out that whole color situation.
The color situation didn't take long to work out. I'm just trying to get the hang of using a wider variety of abilities than before.
Like learning healing biokinesis.
Among other things, yes. Though that was unplanned.
I'm glad you cared enough to try. But don't hurt yourself for my sake, Morgan. It's not worth—
Don't you dare tell me it's not worth it. Because you do not get to decide that for me. If I decide you're worth— I trailed off, reluctant to confess something I wasn't ready to confess. It's my choice how I use my abilities and who I use them for. To my surprise, he took my hand and brought my fingers to his lips. Whoa! I'm okay with that.
I guess that means all I can do is say thank you. For that day. For taking care of me since. Thank you, Morgan.
Someone has to look out for you. Are you even aware of how much time in your sister's journal she spends worrying about you?
Huh. Well, I've read it.
I figured you must have.
Have you been finding it helpful?
I've been finding it unnerving, if I'm being honest with you.
Huh. That's so.
I gave him a sharp look at his sudden amusement. He was being very overt and not looking at me. Oh? You know what I'm referring to, don't you?
I was wondering how long it would be before you noticed. It's kind of a weird book, isn't it?
Weird is an understatement. For a journal, she doesn't talk about herself much in it.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It's not a journal in the normal sense.
It's almost like it was written for someone else. Because it was, wasn't it?
You're right. It was.
How did she know about me? And did she tell you before you read the journal, or did you get vibes after reading the journal?
Sylvie was... She was as talented at using her Psi as any queen rank, but she hated using it offensively, for attacking. I bet you can guess by now what her specialty was.
Precognition?
Theokinetics in general, all sight-based abilities. Her best friend was a bishop, so that could be why.
So she knew this journal would end up in my hands specifically? Or just in the hands of someone who needed it?
I'd say she had a pretty good idea of who would end up with it. Most people view precognition or other sight skills as a means to an end, but Sylvia saw it as a means for connection. She could control her abilities a hell of a lot better than others, even most bishops. She talked to me about this journal a lot, a weird amount when I look back. When I left Endgame, I took very little with me. Just a few of my belongings and some of Sylvia's, the journal included. I don't even know why, other than the fact she'd mentioned it to me so many times. Maybe she mentioned it so I take it. With her, it's always hard to say. The first time I read it, well, I guess I figured she wrote it for me at first. But it became clear pretty early on that she didn't. She wrote it for someone else, someone I concluded I was supposed to give it to. Then, when I finished reading it the first time, I found a password locked entry at the end. I got Kesa to help me break into it.
What did you find?
You've heard of a mind bomb, yeah? That thing that hit Terra.
That was mentioned in the journal? Oh, it was in the journal? Wait, hold on. She left a mind bomb in her journal for you? He laughed at the sheer incredulity in my voice. I mean, that mind bomb almost killed Terra.
Turns out, they don't have to be destructive. Though it's rare to find someone who can pre-package an encoded piece of psi that can interact with someone else's mind without harming them. But, like I said, this kind of mental stuff was her forte. It's probably more accurate to say she left a message for me. I reckon it worked the same as a mind bomb, though.
What did it say?
It didn't say anything. Maybe it was too hard to leave a message I could understand. It was more of a flood of images and feelings. Some memories and some things that were ahead of me. Like she knew she was going to die and couldn't do a thing to stop it. She left a message to help me out when she was gone. I saw you in that message.
Whoa, that's creepy.
At the time, they were just some images of a girl I didn't recognize, but someone Sylvie knew I would someday meet. I spent all these years wondering who that girl was and why Sylvia wanted me to meet her. I searched for you too, but there was no way to find you. It wasn't the type of message I could show Kesa, so he couldn't help me search. And I had no idea who you were, how old you were, or where you were from. Then when I first saw you in Cisalis, I recognized you right away. At first, I assumed Sylvia might just have wanted to keep what happened to her from happening to you, you know?
So that's why you were so determined to help me.
I guess there was a feeling of a mission finally coming to fruition, but... This is probably going to sound mad, Morgan. I carried the memory of you with me for almost 10 years. Seeing you for the first time was like finding a lost acquaintance or something. When I saw you scared and cold in that abandoned sector, all I wanted was to protect you. You can't imagine how many times I thought of you over the last few years. You were this mystery I'd only seen a glimpse of. And then I met you, and you were this brilliant, sweet woman who didn't deserve any of the terrible things that happened to you. My point is, I didn't want to help you just because of that journal. Rather than making me want to help you, Sylvia just knew you'd need my help. I like to think I can thank her for my having got the chance to meet you. Almost like she introduced us herself.
Oh? You're thankful to have met me? He reached a hand to me, fingers lighting against my cheek in a feather-soft caress.
I am. And I'm glad you're here, selfish as it is to say it. I'm just glad. Spending time with you is a breath of fresh air.
I'm glad too. I mean, I'm still frustrated at the sudden change of direction in my life, but I'm glad I'm here. It's kind of a strange, conflicting feeling. I blame you, frankly.
I'll take the blame for that.
We stood a long time in comfortable silence and standing just a little too close to pretend the proximity was unintentional. I mean, it was very romantic, the whole idea of him having, like, this image of her for years and thinking about her and instinctively wanting to protect her when he first met her and stuff. It's, I don't know. I'm just like, oh, that's so sweet. It was nice. It sounded nice. Hey, are you wearing Jack's clothes again? Why would you be doing that? Squint. Squint. I'd been awake for a while, lying curled under the blankets, listening to the soft sound of rain outside. I needed to get up, but I hadn't slept well, tossing and turning under the assault of strange dreams. Oh, hello again! Apparently, Jack is a big fan of having his shirt off for most of his CGs, which I'm okay with. For the record. When I finally opened my eyes, I was confronted right away with the sight of the well-muscled back of my current roommate. He was sitting on the bed, pants riding low enough on his hips that I couldn't quite stop the little flutters that ran through me at the sight of him. He looked over his shoulder and shot me a crooked grin.
Mind giving me a hand with the shirt?
I mean, if I have to. Heat crept into my face as I realized how hard I'd been staring. It wasn't like I hadn't seen it before already anyway. I sat up in a hurry, dragging my messy hair away from my face. Yeah, sure. It had taken 2 more days before Jack was noticeably returning to normal. Celeste was able to finish healing up most of his wounds. The biggest remaining issue was the wrist. He had wanted to go out and check the area where he'd been ambushed before, but Kesa told him to stay put until his recovery was complete. And Kesa seemed to be the only one Jack listened to. I was still sharing a room with Jack. I had noticed. I'm like, so he's feeling better, and yet you guys seem to be bunking, and also you're wearing his clothes again? It wasn't an intentional development, but more people had shown up at Cordis in the last few days. People were scared after the incident with Tara got around. There had been more groups seeking protection, and while there wasn't room for all of them in this building, all available rooms had been filled. I gave mine to a small family that had showed up yesterday. It was one of the few big enough for that many people. Ah, I see. You made the sacrifice. Okay. Makes sense. I see you, girl. I see you, girl. With limited space available, Jack had moved my things to his room. Jack shouldn't be moving, period. Never mind moving your things to his room. Temporarily, we both said. Jack joked he still needed someone to help him with his clothes. Putting them on or taking them off? I'm almost certain you can do this on your own by now.
Shoulder's still giving me some trouble.
Oh, you got your crimson shirt today. I pulled the shirt down over his torso, giving him my most dubious glare.
It is, I swear.
Celeste said she took care of most of the residual damage, I hope you realize.
Then maybe I just want an excuse to be close to you.
No kidding. He laughed and caught a lock of my hair.
You know, you don't actually have to stay here. In this room, I mean. Or we can at least have them bring another bed in for you. It's not uncommon for people to share since space is limited, but...
I know.
So that means you want to... stay?
I do, if I'm being honest. I caught his hand and moved a little closer to him. I mean, I'm quite certain my mother would question all my choices here. We barely know each other, but it's... I mean, I really like you. Normally, I don't rush into things, but this isn't a normal situation. What is waiting going to get me? It isn't like I can expect date nights and romantic dinners.
I would like to deny that, but romantic dinners would be tough to pull off, I admit. I mean, I'd take you on dates all you wanted if I could, Morgan.
I guess my point is that I don't need dates and dinners to figure out who you are. You've shown me several times over already, and I like the person I've seen.
Do you?
I wouldn't put up with your whining about getting dressed if I didn't.
I didn't think... I mean, when we first met, I guess I figured...
Is this where you tell me you never thought I'd be interested in a guy like you?
Yeah, I guess it is.
I don't know if you're underestimating yourself or underestimating me, but the things important to me are all qualities you have. When it comes to more superficial things like...
having a reliable job that doesn't involve criminal enterprises.
Okay, yes. Under normal circumstances, that would be a mark against you. But we can't pretend the situation right now is normal. If I'm waiting around for some kind office worker to sweep me off my feet, I may be waiting a while. And I'm learning that a kind criminal isn't so bad.
Fair enough. Does the fact you're willing to share a bed with me mean I can assume we've made a specific decision about things between us?
It probably depends on the things in question, but I think it's safe to assume the current living situation is to my liking. And so is my roommate. This is like one of the sweetest confessions so far, just by the by. I really like how it's developing. I'm like, this is great. And everything else? We can just take those things as they develop.
Good. That's good. It doesn't mean I'm going to be expecting anything in particular. The fact we're sharing a room...
And a bed?
Yes. And that. I'm just saying it doesn't come with expectations. I'm just glad you're staying.
Me too.
I'm going to head down and check in with the others. You have any specific plans for today?
Just the usual. So, nothing too interesting.
Kesa and I are supposed to talk later today. I'll be sure to give him the message for your mum.
Thanks.
How are they doing, anyway?
They're fine. Mum said they're seeing less of Endgame these days. For a while, they were hanging around a lot. She thinks they're still there, just not in the open anymore.
They probably don't have much hope of you contacting home anymore, but they may just want to monitor your family to be safe. I bet the council is feeling pretty worried about the possibility your story will go public. I'm sure the story they told your parents is a version that makes them look much better than they should.
I feel like we've read this before, but... Endgame's council is the ruling body that heads the entire organization. The 9-person council is made up almost entirely of non-Espers, and are considered the oh yeah, that's right. I remember being like, wait, non-Espers decide things for all the Espers? I don't like that. and are considered the final decision makers for all of Endgame's most important decisions. The Council delegates day-to-day decisions to department heads and other leaders within the organization, but big decisions are always debated by and decided upon by the Council itself. The Council is advised by some Espers or Esper groups such as the Head King rank and the Moirai, but though considered the head of the Esper forces, many consider Magnus Ulrich little more than a figurehead at the beck and call of the Council itself. Indeed.
But it's not a loose end they'll want to leave hanging either. I'm sure they'll monitor them for a while.
Fortunately, they don't care. As long as they know I'm safe, Mum says Endgame can lurk outside forever if they want. And at the very least, I know they're safe.
I'm glad to hear it.
Anyway, I'll let you get going. I wanted to do a little practicing before I head down.
Okay then. See you later, Morgan.
Of course. He left me there, and for a moment I just sat on the bed staring at the door. It wouldn't be long before he was back on the streets looking for those people that attacked them. I wasn't looking forward to that. Don't blame you. Aside from my usual training and practicing, I had still been helping out around Cordis as well. One way I had been helping involved Rory. It was Kesa who requested I keep trying to talk to him, bring him out of his shell. It wasn't easy, but I'd had a small amount of success. I'd got him out of his room a couple of times and had shown him around Cordis. And I'd learned some things about him over the last few days. Yesterday was the day some pieces finally fell into place. Go on. A teacher? That's unexpected.
I taught primary school in an outer dome of New Albion.
I thought you were younger than me, so I expected you to still be a student.
I'm almost 38.
That was a surprise. He really seemed more my age. Were you always aware you were an Esper then?
I found out when I was in my late teens, but since I was just a low-level infantry, I was registered but not recruited into Endgame. Even though I was F-class, I could never do that much with my Psi.
Interesting, so Rory is also F-class. I puzzled over that for a while, because I was certain Rory was a Rook, but I didn't believe he was lying to me. If he could have been promoted, potentially, and is not aware of it? We sat on the back stairs together for a long while as he continued to talk. That day, it was almost like a floodgate opened. When he finally got started, his story came tumbling out in a rush. And it was not a pleasant story. He didn't have any issues for a long time, but about 3 years ago, he had come to Delphine on holiday, one of their outer domes that was a frequent destination by people on the day side. It was an anniversary trip with his partner.
We never really knew who they were with. They just walked up and grabbed us, shoved us into a black cargo wagon. But they knew who I was, and that I was an Esper. I don't know what happened to Avery. We were separated when we were taken. They were just a normal person, so...
What did the attackers want with you?
I became a test subject.
Well, that's sounding awfully familiar from what happened in Ari's route. I think Ari's bad ending was even called test subject. Okay. Maybe my theory is not completely crazy.
I know nothing about them. I could never learn much. There was no way to learn anything in that place. But I wasn't the only Esper there. I think they wanted to find ways to enhance us.
Well, they might have been successful with you, if you're a Rook now. He stared down at his hands, opening and closing them.
I could never do the sorts of things I do now. They changed me.
Some infantry could become higher ranked, so that could have been what they did to Rory. Enhanced him until he developed rook-like abilities. Not without a cost, though. The strengthened Psi was unstable, and Rory said it wasn't uncommon for the test subjects to die. The tests he'd undergone had been excruciating. That also sounds familiar from Ari's route. The whole thing with Trent and his research group. They strengthened Trent to be able to reach out to Morgan, and it made his Psi unstable for a while, but he didn't use it long enough to have any burnout. Okay, things are starting to connect. I like it. I could see the shadows of them still haunting his face when he talked about it. But that wasn't the only thing.
He was a test subject there too, but he wasn't like the rest of us. I saw him once. They were leading me back to my cell after a round of medication. I passed the test lab he was in. He had a massive Psi inhibitor. I've never seen anything like it before. It wasn't like the small devices you see sometimes. It was huge, as if they had to go to extreme measures to control his Psi. He was the one that got us all out.
How?
I'm not sure exactly what happened. The facility lost power. All power, even the backup systems. It was as if there had been an EMP that took out everything at once. Just for a split second. That was all the chance he needed. He must have been a queen rank. He was so powerful. With the rest of us,
You don't have to talk about it if you're not ready.
He could take over our minds, control us, Morgan. He took over the test subjects that way, turned us all against the staff. He used us to destroy that place. But he couldn't maintain control of everyone. That was how some of us got away. I found my way back to New Albion. Months of wandering, stowing away, hiding. But even if I got away, I was still connected to him. I could never shut him out. I would hear his whispers in my head. That was how he found you through me. And he took me over again. I think he's become stronger.
What does he want?
I'm not sure. He was looking for you. You severed that connection he had with me. Do you remember? You reached out to me and just... the connection snapped and his Psi retracted. I haven't felt him since then.
I mean, that's good. Does he know that Morgan is Morgan like the only one that's a threat to his power, quote unquote? And that's why he wants to find her? Or can she help him in some way? I don't know. That had been a day of terrifying revelations. Not just of what had happened to Rory, but the knowledge someone terrifying had been looking for me, was still looking for me. I had relayed all of that to the others, of course. Kesa had to do some digging to find the lab that had been destroyed, but he was pretty sure he located it. He said it belonged to a group called Nyx, a secretive government-run group. Ba-da-da-da! Who knew? They were pretty well known to dabble in human experimentation, with Espers in particular, so that part checked out. It had given us a place to start, but it was still tricky to fit the pieces together. With luck, he'd been able to find out more, and he would share it with Jack when they talked later. Interesting. So I wonder if... Okay. Expanding on my theory time. So, this queen... when everyone broke out, I would assume, if my theories are correct, that Deimos and Jack's sister were also there in the lab when the breakout happened. but he wasn't able to keep his control over Deimos, so maybe Deimos was able to escape and has been hiding from him, like Rory was. But maybe Jack's sister has not been so lucky and is still being controlled by him, because she's got the weird eyeball thing going on, like Rory did before we cleansed him of that. So, that's where my current theory is at this point, based on everything we've learned. So I guess this guy is not associated with Nyx now. He'd have his own group. But it would explain why he has so many Espers, because he basically took over all the Espers that Nyx had taken to experiment on. Right? I think I got my thoughts straight on that. I hope. I wasn't expecting you to come by again so soon. Turns out, Jack didn't have to give the message to Kesa for me, because Kesa showed up in person and invited me to join him as he and Jack talked.
I felt it was a message better delivered in person. It's really sounding like this guy from the lab is the one behind the mind bomb. I know what everyone says about mind control, that it's supposed to be impossible. But everything we're finding out shows there may be someone out there with that kind of power. I agree with your theory about the people we met the other day, too. Now that I look back on it, they were acting weird for sure. And their eyes were weird as hell.
See? Jack had noticed the eyes, too. Eyes again.
How were their eyes weird? They were dark, and... Look, you know how sometimes if you look close, you can see a person's psi energy reflected in the eyes? Something about it affecting the cornea. Yes, of course. Normally, it only shows up when your psi is active, and it's usually at least somewhat affected by the eye color, at least in most N-class Espers. These guys all had the same color psi effect. Their eyes were dark, glowing gold, and glowing the entire time. It was unusual. As if it was someone else's psi energy being reflected outward.
Interesting. Good point, good point. That makes sense. Come to think of it, Rory's eyes were like that too when I saw him in the vivarium. But oddly, not when I saw him the day before. And he did indicate that he'd broken free from this guy's control, but after he first met me, he implied control had been reestablished. That woman who attacked us that day, she may have had the same eyes. It was a little chaotic, but she struck me as strange even at the time. Yes, that woman. That woman. Will she play a part in this? Will she be Jack's sister? Let's find out.
It seems clear this man was targeting you.
If he's capable of it, why not take over my mind then? Why not now?
Perhaps it's a distant situation. He had a pre-established connection with Rory, but not with you. I imagine that's why he wanted to capture you first instead. And he may not know you're here. Remember, the disappearances in Chestershire began before you arrived.
I just struggled to connect all the dots. This guy was part of a human experimentation project that he escaped from. Now he's targeting Espers to gather them up for... what? What's his goal? That is the burning question.
Something he clearly doesn't want us interfering with if he left a mind bomb for us to stumble on. It's apparent we are missing pieces of the puzzle. For instance, the fact that he can mind control anyone in the first place is bizarre. F-class Espers do have unique abilities. It could just be that he's a fairy with skills we haven't seen before.
Something controlling people is... horrifying. How do we fight back or defend against that?
Morgan, you were able to snap Rory out of whatever he was experiencing. How did you do that?
I can't say. At the time I was just panicking, trying my best to reach him or reason with him somehow. Most of what I did that day was a complete accidental use of my abilities, from teleporting to messing with the instruments in Jack's car. I'm not sure I can pinpoint my exact process. Now that I'm better acquainted with Psi and can visualize it and sense it properly, I might be able to recreate what I did, though. But that means having someone to try it on.
We're not putting Morgan on the streets to combat this. If she's the only one who can combat it, we may not have a choice. That's ridiculous, Kesa. She's not at all ready for it. Then you will have to do your best to protect her if it comes to that. Assuming there is an assault team of mind-controlled fairy espers out there, I won't have them injuring or killing any more of my people. So what's the plan now? I want to know more about this escaped test subject with supposed mind control abilities. I'll do my best to salvage more information so I can find out about this lab and test subject. We need to know more about who he is and why he might be involved in all this. And I'll see if I can track where he is now. It might be difficult if he's been surviving off-grid for a long time, but I'll do my best. Searching for the missing people will remain difficult. We can't risk a psychic search that will inflict another of our bishops with a mind bomb. Terra is still recovering from the last one. I should be ready to head out again tomorrow with Rowan and June. This time we stay as a group. Good. I expect you to retreat faster if you encounter those espers again. I believe that, for now, our best approach may be prevention. But given how spread out everyone is, that may prove difficult. Infrastructure here is lacking severely, but I've sent all camera feeds to a central location I can monitor with relative ease. And I've taken pains to repair any non-functioning ones possible to spread the surveillance net a little wider. I've sent a map with the dead angles to you and the others. Those are the areas I want to have security patrols, only ranked espers, and only in pairs. It's the best we can do for now. And... Morgan. I've read through your last message with the details on your ideas. I hope you understand that currently...
I get that a crisis isn't the time to work on that kind of improvement. I wasn't expecting anything else. I just hope that in the future...
I also hope we can work something out. Your plan should be workable on a small scale. Please understand that I have to move carefully when it comes to the court. Though money is not a problem, my resources are tied up with Crimson, which limits my ability to do things. I can't simply throw money at Chestershire without it being noticed, and I do not want the court on anyone's radar as more than a pity project.
I understand that it must be a complicated situation.
It is. If it was simple, there would already be massive improvements, but sometimes it feels like a slow crawl. If I do anything too big here, someone is going to show up to knock it all down. I can't do anything major until we can protect ourselves, and that will take time. There are limits to what I can do.
Maybe it's time to break the limits, because it seems like this place is already on someone's radar. For all we know, the reason people are disappearing is that someone is trying to knock this all down.
Perhaps you're right. I would hate to think that's the case.
So would I. Kesa could apparently never stay that long in Chestershire. It was part to keep from drawing attention, and part because he had other responsibilities. He only stopped by again so soon because there was something significant happening and he couldn't ignore it. Though delivering information in person was just an excuse to check on Jack. Not that he'd ever admit it. At least not to Jack's face. Called out.
So this is where you were.
Sorry, were you looking for me?
We just saw Kesa off.
I saw them leave. He joined me at the railing, placing an arm around my shoulders to pull me a little closer. Aww.
It's a nice day for a change.
It is.
Kesa was worried he upset you.
I'm not petty enough to be upset about something like that.
He appreciates that you want to help. To be honest, I still kind of thought I thought you'd probably be hesitant to get involved here. Either afraid of getting too close, or maybe just uninterested.
I'm not analytical for that choice. Ah, we gotta go with faction all the way. Hello? Can I... Interesting. There it is. I'm like, usually I can use the, arrow keys to make a choice, but it wasn't letting me, and, now it is. That's fine. As I was saying, affectionate all the way. There was never a chance I wouldn't start caring about the people here. And that means wanting to make things better for everyone. It's frustrating Case's hands are tied when it comes to implementing them. But I'm sure he'll work it out somehow.
So you've come to care for people here, huh?
Yes. People. Plural. You. And others.
Me, huh? Well, I can't say I'm shocked. I'm a pretty good catch if...
Oh, are you saying I've caught you?
Well, if you want me, I won't say no.
Considering you're the one that brought me, that's good news. It's important to take responsibility for one's actions.
This is one thing I'll gladly take responsibility for.
I laughed as he pulled me into a hug. Then he held me tight for a long time.
We'll get this current situation sorted out. And then you'll be able to quietly solve every problem you want to solve here. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I want to see what you can accomplish when you're not being held back.
I'm not a miracle worker, and a garden or two won't save anyone. But if Case is serious about making a place where Espers can be safe, there are a lot of things that need to change. Enough that at some point it's going to attract attention. If we can't solve the current situation, we'll never be ready for what's ahead.
I know that. I know.
He pulled me back against him, resting his chin on my head. And we stood like that for a long time. In my dream that night, I was walking along an unseen path. At first, there was the usual smell of wet concrete, oil, and filth. But it faded with each step. Cold, damp leaves brushed against my cheeks, streaking fresh dew across my skin. There was soft soil beneath my feet, and the air was warm, welcoming. I just got chills. I got, like, changeling chills reading this. I'm like, oh man. I just got transported back in time. As I walked, there were people around me. Some I knew, some I didn't. There was someone calling me. A hushed voice pulling me deeper and deeper into dark corridors formed out of the surrounding trees. They were long and barely lit with blue strands of strange circuitry and symbols. Ruins of a time before Espers and factions and struggles for some sort of peace. I didn't know where I was or where I was going, but my steps were steady and determined, as if I knew this area by heart. Whoa. Ahead of me was a faint thread I followed, a signifier of the right path to take. Jack was there too, ahead of me, a vague shadow. And someone else. Someone that didn't belong. I don't know what woke me. Some telltale piece of reality that seeped into my dream like a warning, perhaps. And the call of that voice halted. The thread I'd been following snapped and I jolted awake. We totally changelinged. we sleepwalked into danger. Oh no. Hello. Oh, no. Well, this is gonna be fine. For a moment, I thought I was still dreaming because I wasn't in bed. I wasn't in my room. I wasn't even in Cordis. This place was the ruins, the labyrinth below the building. For a moment I stood stock still, letting realization wash over me. It wasn't a dream. The sharpness of sensation made it obvious I was quite awake. Fear and uncertainty gripped my heart. I took a tentative step back, then did a 180 and started back the way I'd come. There were many questions going through my mind, but first I had to get back. I had no idea how far I'd wandered into the ruins. Or why. Or how. A part of me wanted to expand my sphere, check my surroundings. But I remembered what Jack said about the ruins reacting to Psy, and tried to keep a tight rein on it even as I staved off a panic attack. I'd never had an issue with sleepwalking. Ever. I'd never done it before, not even as a child. So why now? And how had I managed to leave the room without waking Jack? He was a light sleeper. On top of that, there was almost always someone awake at Cordis. How had I got past them all? It made no sense unless I teleported myself in my sleep, and I didn't even know if that was possible. I was relieved when the smooth floors of the ruins gave way to the rougher flooring of the catacombs. I hadn't gone far at all. That was reassuring in its own way, but I was still unnerved by the fact I was down there at all. I paused for a moment, just to catch my breath and get my bearings. As I did so, a frosty chill crept over me. Behind, from the darkness of the ruins, a whisper of movement rustled through the shadows. I took a few more steps further into the safety of the catacombs, chancing to expand my sphere a little, now that I was away from the ruins and the Arayan technology. But not before I erected a mental shield, something I'd learned from Sylvia's journal. I'd never done one before outside of practice, but now was as good a time as any to use her advice. There was no one around, not that I could see in my immediate vicinity. I backed towards the area used for storage, keeping my eyes on the darkness down the corridor. As I moved that way, I extended my sphere bit by bit, keeping myself alert to my surroundings. So far, there was nothing. No one. Wait. No, what was that? Like a light at the edge of my sphere. The light flickered. I looked closer, caging it in my Psi. That was my mistake. Pain erupted in my mind as darkness swallowed me. Oh no. Alright, mysterious silhouette man that I don't know.
There you are.
A whisper crept into my mind. The surrounding shadows writhed like snakes, and in them I saw the gold flash of someone's eyes. They were all around me, everywhere, looking into me, seeing everything. I pushed it away, the eyes, the darkness, but they were tangled into me. I couldn't get loose. Somewhere inside myself, I found the strength to push with the full force of my Psi, and I screamed. The sound echoed inside myself, echoed in the catacombs until I felt my head would explode. It echoed through the ground and into the walls of the building above. Then the light hit me again, and I think I ran, fleeing back to the stairs that led up to Cordis. I barely remembered falling and trying to crawl my way up the steps. There were muffled shouts and footsteps. I collapsed, unable to move further or understand anything beyond the roaring pain in my head. Damn it. Why did this always happen to me?